In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your
Sweet.
country.
Okay, we are back and we are doomed to fail. Not literally, only figuratively, because our name is doomed to fail. But we are doomed to succeed. Not doomed.
Oh,
We
yeah.
are destined. Right, Taylor?
Perfect. Perfect so far. No notes.
I'm Forrest, joined here by Taylor. This week we heard all about the Opium War from Taylor. Wars, plural. And this week I'm going to be covering a topic of my own. I'm going to be going back, Taylor, towards the true crime side of things. I will say that the more I've covered true crime and the more I investigate true crime, the more tiring it is to just talk about how someone gets gutted and killed and murdered and thrown into a ditch. Like, it's just like, that's not the interesting part. So I found
That's
a
fair.
case where the interesting part is really how they got caught. And so I'm gonna cover a Michigan killer.
Ooh.
And I was in Michigan. I was in Michigan for Memorial Day.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Taylor. I don't, maybe I'm just like a softie like this, but being out there, I was like, this place is so gorgeous. Like, I don't
No,
get why
Michigan's
we don't
beautiful.
all live there. And I
Because
met
it's the
up.
weather.
It's partially, yeah. So apparently they've had a lot milder winters the past couple of
Oh.
winters. God bless global warming. Apparently, it worked out for
Mhm.
them. But I hung out with our old former colleague, Brian Palmer, if you remember him.
Oh, yeah. He lives in Detroit.
Yeah, he lives in Detroit, and we landed in Detroit. And I was asking him, I was like, "This place is incredible. It's so beautiful. It's so lush. It's like weirdly affordable for how pretty it is."
Mhm.
And he was like, "Yeah, it's like the best kept secret. It's like everybody thinks that this place sucks and it's too cold to inhabit and all that. And like we kind of want it that way because it keeps everything normal and affordable." And I was like, "I get it. Like I would
I
totally
mean, we
be like
also
that."
used to work with Michigan's PR person.
It's
So
true.
someone whose job it
He's
is to get
literally
people into
PR there.
Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Actually, I think she's a chief strategy officer now or something. Anyways, who knows? So anyways, I was there and I was having some conversations with folks and I learned about a local boogeyman in Michigan who precedes like some fan favorites, precedes Ted Bundy, precedes John Wayne Gacy, a particularly brutal guy, which
Hmm.
at the end of this conversation, I would love to get your perspective on why this guy isn't famous, because he is brutal, ruthless, like
Maybe it's
all
too
the things.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe too much, but I don't know. You'll see. He's gonna be like a very Ted Bundy-esque kind of a character. But I'm gonna be
Mhm.
covering a guy named who I would bet any amount of money you have not heard of, John Norman Collins.
Maybe not.
You haven't heard of him?
I knew a man named John Collins, and his parents were from Ireland, and he wanted to get dual Irish citizenship. And in order to get it, he had to go find a police officer or a Catholic priest to sign his papers. And we laughed for like 7 days because that was the most Irish requirement in the whole world.
Sorry, you don't know a serial killer by that name, do you?
No.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. So I don't have to pay you.
Nope.
But so I already named the guy. So let's just backfill the story by starting with his life, like who he is roughly, and then get into what ended up happening, and then get into the most interesting part, which is like him getting caught. So
Mhm.
this guy John, I'm just gonna call him John. He was born on June 17th, 1947 in Windsor, Ontario. For the non-geography buffs, that is in Canada. Thank you. His father abandoned the family when John was a baby, when he was first born, and the mother went on to have a series of horrible, horrible relationships. She ended up getting married to about 3 different men, and they were all increasingly worse than the last. I think the last one was an abusive alcoholic who beat the shit out of John and the mom. So not good,
Ugh.
not great. But
No.
also, this was like raising a child in the 40s and 50s in Michigan. If you
Yeah.
didn't
Wait, how did they get to
beat
Michigan?
that, I don't know. I think the mom is from there, and somehow they were in Ontario, Canada, and that's when, or Windsor, Ontario, when she gave birth. But
Okay.
my point was like, if you're raising a kid in Michigan, like, isn't just like being an alcoholic who beats them kind of normal? Like, isn't that like how you're supposed to raise a kid in the 1950s? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, I feel like that is a big part of
I mean,
the
it made a lot of
the
strong
boomer
men. So maybe,
trauma.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe we should be beating our children more often. Parents, if you have a child and you aren't beating them, can you write to us and let us know why? Um,
I can tell you I don't beat my children, but continue.
nice cover.
Hmm.
Um, I'm kidding, obviously. So okay, so the type of person John was. So I hate to like describe it this way, and I know you're gonna hate it too. He was just like a normal guy growing up in Michigan. He was an honor roll student.
Hmm.
He played baseball. He lettered in football. He dated a ton. He was super popular. And ultimately, he would end up attending a university called Eastern Michigan for a degree in education, with his ultimate goal being an elementary school teacher, which goes to show why you should never trust anybody.
Don't love that. Yeah.
This guy's like an absolute horrific monster, and he's going to teach children. So he started exhibiting antisocial behavior around this time. So it would have been somewhere around his like sophomore year, where again he was really popular with women, and he would go out with a lot of girls, and a lot of them would later on report how he was really antisocial and awkward and aggressive in ways that were unusual for some reason, which I could not. I mean, I Googled enough to where there's definitely some sort of a tracker on my search history, but he was obsessed with like not wanting women to be menstruating around him. Like
Like he
really
thought he could
weird.
tell?
He would ask. There was
Yeah.
stories of him literally asking someone, "Are you on your period?" And then when they would reply affirmatively, him losing it on them. Like
Yeah.
weird, like again, like I keep saying weirdly antisocial behavior, but like that's really weirdly
That's weird.
antisocial behavior, I think.
That's like it's like maybe okay if you're like 13, and you like don't know what it is and you're just like being a boy and you're being dumb,
Right,
or
right.
whatever. But like it's not okay when you're a grown man, even in the
And
40s.
you're getting an education degree to teach other brains like
Yeah.
how to grow up.
Yeah.
So, um, it was around this time when John would be around 20 and in his sophomore junior year of college that a string of murders started happening in a city. I'm gonna call it, it's Ypsilanti. Nobody knows. I don't think anybody knows where Ypsilanti is. It's Ann Arbor. Like it's like
Got
in
it.
and around Ann Arbor, like University of Michigan. It's like that whole area. It's
Hmm.
technically a 15-mile radius. It's a county that encompasses Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor. But like, just picture that. I
Okay.
was also in Ann Arbor last weekend, and Taylor, it is so beautiful. Like
I
you
know.
gotta go. You gotta visit.
I've been to Northern Michigan, I've been to Mackinac Island, and then also Michigan is so confusing, like where it is and why it's on Eastern time, and like all of the map things. Like I work with someone who lives in Ohio, but she lives like an hour from Detroit, and I'm like, none of this makes any sense. Like I don't understand this part of America.
Yeah, and a part
Um,
of Michigan is like attached to Wisconsin.
and then also it's just like so much more north than parts of Canada.
Yeah, yeah. It is a it's weird, but there is a sandwich shop there, Zingerman, I think it was called. It is phenomenal. It's like a Jewish deli in the center of Ann Arbor, and it's like a city block of just like this deli. But then like there's like the deli also has like a separate ice cream parlor. It's just so fun. You'll have a great time. You can literally
Oh,
just go to Ann Arbor and go visit this one deli.
you should have gone to the Gerald Ford Presidential Library.
So what I was going to do was go to the Henry Ford Library, and I was like, if I do
Right.
this and I tell Taylor, she's going to lambast me for doing
That's
it. So
not
I'm just
true.
not
No,
gonna.
that's where you can learn how to drive the Model T. You
Damn it!
can't learn to
Damn
drive it
it!
anywhere else.
Damn
I
it!
saw an old Ford at a fair, like a county fair we had last week in town, and I was like looking at the pedals because remember I looked up how to drive a Model T, and you can go to one of those places in Michigan, but you have to exactly you do the cranking. There's like a lot of I don't know how to drive a stick, so it's like a stick times 10 because it's like way more gears that you have to do. But
Is it really? I gotta research that. That's really interesting.
it's like something else. Like it's like extra steps.
Yeah, yeah. They probably didn't
Um,
have like real train. How are we talking about this? In my serial killer podcast. Let me get back to this.
okay, well I'm gonna say when next time you go, you should do that and drive a Model T. That's
Everybody,
all.
you heard from Taylor.
It sounds super
Um,
fun.
Okay, so we're talking about this area. Ann Arbor is where we're talking about. So I'm gonna start getting into the murders, and again, the murders they are what they are. Like it's tragic, it's awful, whatever. But I'm not gonna go into too much detail because like who gives a shit? Like it's the exact same thing story over and over again. So on August 7th, 1967, a naked body was found on a patch of land near eastern Michigan and identified using dental records to be a woman who is a 19-year-old named Mary Therese Blessar, who was a student at eastern Michigan as well. She was brutalized, obviously. Her feet were cut off, as were some of her fingers, and she had about 30 stab wounds. It was bad. It was a really bad murder.
Yeah.
Like it was really grotesque. Like it was like one of those murders where like this guy just wanted to do the killing part. You know they do like a product versus like process killer,
Hmm.
and some want the body because they crave the body, and some crave that kill. This feels like a I want the kill kind of guy.
Yikes.
So something I found that was kind of sad. There's like a modern looking website that's being maintained in honor of Mary's life. She died in 67. You can find it. It's maryflessar.com. It's Mary MaryFlessar.com. And if you go to it, it looks kind like
Aw.
it's like a modern looking site. It's like a weird GeoCities thing. I mean, it doesn't look like a $500,000 website or anything, but like it looks like somebody like recently has updated and maintained it and like updated the fonts and all that stuff. And it just like includes things that she liked to do when she was a kid, and it includes her favorite hobbies and pictures of her when she was a kid and pictures of her family now, saying like, I didn't know any of you and y'all never knew me, but I think we would have loved each other. Like it's really sad. I've never seen like a family do that. Like
No, this is really sad.
it's like 60 years ago.
I know, but like, yeah.
So she has on her website a quote that goes, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." Do you know who that quote is?
Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yes.
Yes.
She said that was her favorite quote
Woo.
was this one quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, and I thought you'd like that.
I do love that. Oh, poor thing.
Yeah, really sad. Really, really sad.
Yeah.
So moving on. To murder number two, it was about a year later where another body was found. This time it was that of a woman named Joan Elspeth Shale.
These are very
SC.
middle of the
I
US
know.
names
I
are
know.
hard.
I know. I know. They're
You're
really
doing your
thick. They're
best.
really thick.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
she was 20 years old. She'd also been stabbed to death. And for several reasons, it looked like her body had been moved. Basically, the last time anybody saw her, it was her roommate. And the roommate accompanied Joanne to a bus stop to catch a bus to Ann Arbor to stay with her boyfriend for the weekend. She had apparently missed the bus, and a group of three men rolled up to her, and she accepted the ride. And that's the last time anybody saw her. Taylor, there's gonna be like audience and Taylor. There's gonna be some bounce around here because I'm taking things a little bit out of chronological order because it'll actually make sense more in the totality of the whole conversation we're having. But I'm gonna leave it that as far as like the experience of her getting picked up by men. I promise I'm not gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna come back to that here in a minute or like in
Like
20
that
minutes.
that there were three of them.
Yes,
Okay.
it's gonna become relevant. So
Okay.
regarding her body when she was found, so her top half was way more decomposed than her bottom half, indicating that perhaps her bottom half was somewhere colder after death than her upper body was.
The
And
river.
also, there was no blood underneath the body when she was discovered. And a thing that I didn't set forth in the previous murder was that kind of the same thing happened to her. A little bit different. It didn't have to do with decomposition of the blood thing, but it did have to do with the fact that she'd been moved around. Like it was obvious she'd been moved a bunch. So at
Hmm.
this point, it was becoming clear like somebody was doing something to these women and then like taking them from one place to another, which is like pretty important to know. So
Right. But that makes me feel like they like the process and the product.
I don't know. The
Ju-
violence is just so violent. Like,
But,
what do
why
you
don't
do with a body that's been like its hands? I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of gross people.
I think it must be just harder than not like doing something with, like sexually, but like they like having it around, you know?
Maybe.
Or like they have done it because I don't know, it's much harder to get rid of a body than you would imagine because all these people have trouble getting rid of bodies and people find them and all the things.
It's
But
true. That
still,
is true. That is, I have heard that like the hardest part of like committing a murder isn't the killing part, is to getting rid of the body part.
yeah.
So one thing to remind you of, Taylor, this was all happening in 1968. Do you know why that's relevant? Could you guess why that's relevant to this conversation?
Vietnam.
No, it's that we didn't know what a serial killer was. Like serial killing wasn't
Sure,
a
sure,
thing.
sure.
There was
Yeah.
no like let's create these directories of all these different murders, then tie them together so that different police can talk to different police. Like none of that existed.
Hmm.
The 1970s, we're in the 1960s right now. It wasn't until the 1970s till the like quote unquote careers, I guess, of Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy even started, which were like the archetypical serial killers. So like this
Yeah.
wasn't really a thing yet. So
Hmm.
you're flying really blind if you're the police here.
No, totally.
So murder number three, about 8 months later, after murder number two, the body of a University of Michigan law student who was named Jane Louise Mixer was found having been shot in the head. There was no signs of sexual assault. The other two did have signs of sexual assault, which I left off before. But it was still weird enough to find a decomposing body within miles of all these other recently found bodies, and so they connected the dots on that. And then a few days after Jane's body was found, another decomposing body that was also new was found a few miles away. That was a 16-year-old girl named Marilyn Skelton, and her cause of death was blunt force trauma, which resulted in multiple skull fractures. It was a brutal way to die.
Mm.
Moving on to number 5 and 6, less than a month after Mary Lynn's body was found, the body of a 13-year-old girl was found, Dawn Louise Bassam. She was found on the side of a road, and she had stab wounds and strangulation marks on her neck. During the investigation of Dawn's murder, police investigated a vacant farmhouse about 100 yards from where her body was found and discovered evidence that this was probably where she had been murdered. Again, now we have two murders for sure at the very beginning that we knew weren't committed at the spot where the body was found. Now we have murder number 5, where we know for sure that there was a murder that happened in a farmhouse outside of where this body was dragged to. So,
Hmm. It's also just like so much about the Midwest. You know, I was always like someone from Wisconsin, whatever. And I keep trying to get people to buy me Wisconsin Death Trap for my birthday because I really like it. Have you ever read that? It's not
um,
really a book. It's not really a book. I got it from the library in LA one time and I read it on the subway and people were looking at me weird. It's just a list of weird things from gravestones in Wisconsin and how like weird ways people died.
Taylor, I will tell you that when I was in Michigan, one morning when nothing was going on, I took a probably 2 hour detour walking through a graveyard in Michigan,
I love that for you.
and it was peaceful and kind of lovely, actually.
I love that.
So, moving on. When police investigated this farmhouse, again, this vacant farmhouse where they found evidence of the murder of Don Louisin, they also discovered the earrings of the previous victim, the 16-year-old Marilyn. So they were starting to connect some dots. I get such true crime. Is that what it's called? What's it called? The HBO series? Is it True Crime? No,
Oh, True Blood? No.
True Blood's a vampire one.
Right. With Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah.
I've never seen it, but I know what you're talking about. Two Lies. No.
Somebody's like screaming into their, into the
It's one of those
steering
things
wheel
that
right
I'm a
now.
Matthew McConaughey
It's true
HBO
crime.
show. True
Crime?
Detective.
True Detective. It's it's so True Detective sounding, which I kind of love despite how horrible and violent it is. So basically, okay, so 2 months after the discovery of the body, this 13-year-old, the nude body of a 21-year-old Alice Elizabeth Calum was discovered by another in another abandoned farmhouse. She'd also been stabbed extensively and shot in the head. Keep that one in mind. Keep Alice Elizabeth Calum in mind because she had been stabbed extensively and shot in the head. We're gonna come
See
back
the
to all
first one
this.
shot?
No, she wasn't. So the first
Okay.
one shot was Jane Louise Mixer, which was a law student at University of Miami. But we will circle back to that
Okay.
too. So
I'm ready.
So by now they have 6 murders, all happening in close proximity to each other, and all within a 2-year period of time. There, there's some outliers. Again, kind of to your point, the fact that 2 of them were children is kind of weird. The fact that
Hmm.
some of them were sexually assaulted and some weren't is a little bit odd. The fact that some had gunshot wounds to the head versus stabbings or strangulations, it was a little bit different. Like, it was kind of like all over the map. But regardless, it
Hmm.
was clear that there was some connection between at least some of the murders. So, to the infinite credit of the police in Michigan at this time, given we just discussed about cooperation around serial killings in the 1960s, they did something that was rare then, and it's kind of rare now too. They coordinated efforts. So, these murders were all over a 15-mile radius in Washtenaw County, Michigan. And that essentially meant that 5 different law enforcement agencies had jurisdiction over different parts of the murders.
Hmm.
Usually that means that they would just work their cases separately. But in this case, given the immense public outcry from the community, they actually coordinated their efforts.
Wow.
Yeah, the community was terrified, and police really had no leads to help them hone in on a perpetrator. This part I actually love. At one point, they hire a psychic to try and predict who the killer is, which is
I love when they do that. They're like,
the
fuck it.
1960s. Like,
Yeah.
fuck it, who cares? This psychic, a guy named Peter Herkos, basically sounds like a charlatan. He guessed that the killer would be a strongly built white male under 25 years of age, born outside of the US, and who rode a motorcycle. So
Wait, that's pretty cool. They got born outside the US,
that is cool. I will give you
right?
that. That is cool. But also, he's guessing in Ann Arbor, Michigan in the 1960s, where the vast majority are white men under the age of 25.
Yeah, sure.
I
But
guess he's
the
still right.
outside
He's
the
still
US,
right.
yeah, sure, sure, sure. Yeah, I want to say a dude did it
He's still right.
who has
Okay,
mom
fine.
issues.
Fine.
Yeah,
He's still right. But
that
I
part I think
will
is cool. But
later
but
on,
also, but maybe not because also like my family I know immigrated to Canada first and then to the US to the Midwest, so maybe there was a lot of that happening as well.
I'll also say that he in the 1960s predicted that Hitler didn't die in the bunker, that he was living in Argentina, and that's where we get the whole shtick of Hitler living in Argentina from.
I mean, right, that's not great.
Like, I mean, maybe he was right. Who knows? So, one last thing that he predicted was that whoever the killer was wasn't done yet, and they were going to kill again. And on that point, he was proven right on July 26, 1969, the most consequential murder that we've discussed so far. The body of 18-year-old Karen Sue Beineman was found. And there was a lot going on with this one. So this sounds like, when I read about the way she was killed, it sounded like a scene out of Seven, the movie. He beat the shit out of her. And
Hmm.
he also removed parts of her skin to the point where you could see like the subcutaneous fat underneath it. Like, he really did a number on her. But then on top of that, for some reason, he made her drink some sort of caustic substance like bleach. Like, it was like weird torture murder stuff. Like, it was really scary.
They all feel so different.
They kind of feel different. Yeah.
Like they're all awful and they all feel different. Like I can't even tell if it's escalating or not because they're all like different, you know?
Yeah. This one feels like more brutal than the rest. Although,
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know.
for sure.
Like, he also killed a 13-year-old. Like, like, how do
Yeah.
you tell like what's worse? I mean, they're all bad. So this woman, Karen, was killed. And by now you're in a college town, everybody's losing their mind, and the police are trying to figure out like we gotta figure something out. Like, this is like everybody's losing their minds at us. And so they start by going back to examining some of the previous killings. So back when police had first discovered Joan, she was the one that had accepted a ride for the men for the bus stop that I told you I'd come back to, right?
Right, the three
Um,
of them, potentially.
she Police had at that time gone over every single lead they could go over. The roommate had described the car, so they pulled the registrations on all the cars that fit that description, and they'd run interviews of those guys. They'd also described, or the roommate also described the men in the car. But again, how many different ways can you write down white men in their early 20s in a college town in Michigan? Like,
Yeah.
it's everybody. Like,
Yeah,
so
even today. Yeah.
Yeah. And so months after the body was found, though, police had been told about John Norman Collins. Basically, two eyewitnesses stated they saw Joan walking with John specifically, people who knew them. And a police officer named Larry Matheson had met with and interviewed John and was convinced by him that he never knew Joan, never met her, and that he was in Detroit the weekend that Joan disappeared. And he bought it. He believed her or believed him. When
Hmm.
police started retracing the steps Karen had taken the day she went missing, they started with a wig shop she had visited that day and was told by the employee of the wig shop that she specifically remembers Karen because she mentioned that she felt stupid because she had accepted a ride to the wig shop and from the wig shop by a stranger on a motorcycle who was waiting for her outside.
This I remember. This is familiar to me from something. And
It was
they never saw her again.
probably
Yeah,
ID or somebody brought this up.
probably.
So this officer was Larry Mathewson, who had interviewed John over a year prior. And when he heard the wig shop employee describing the man on the motorcycle, his head went to that sounds like that guy John I interviewed immediately. So
It's so wild. Like, have you ever been interviewed for potentially being a murderer?
shockingly, no.
Because there's like in these stories, like they interviewed 100 dudes in town, and you're like, what? It just feels wild.
I don't know anybody who has been interviewed for that.
Yeah.
So this officer, having heard from the wig shop employees, pulls up a picture of John, and the wig shop employee says, "Yeah, that was the guy that was on the motorcycle waiting for Karen." And everybody knew that the last person to have seen Karen alive were these wig shop employees. So they're like, "Okay, this is something." So police start looking into John, and they start interviewing people who know him, and they discover that he had some again antisocial behavior, especially weird anger towards women. I don't know what his personality type is, where like you just hate women. Like I don't get like I
Like,
don't.
like an incel, you know, they like hate women so much.
But that's the thing. That's what's weird about this guy. Like he wasn't an incel. Like, he was dating a lot. Like he was constantly.
Was
He
he
had like
a
multiple
teacher
girlfriends.
yet, or
Like
is he still in college?
he's in college still. Yeah, I don't get this. Like I just hate women personality. Like I so but that's basically what it was. He had legitimately multiple corroborating sources said that he legitimately raped at least one woman in college,
Oh,
and
like that was that he didn't murder.
that didn't murder, and that even under consensual situations with women, he would grow angry for reasons that were like unusual, kind of like the whole menstruating thing. When he would find out a
Oh,
woman was menstruating, he would lose his shit at them. It was like again weirdly antisocial. Um,
weird.
he was also at this time when he was in college employed at a company where they made drum brakes, which are like brakes for cars. And he would talk to his coworkers about details of these murders that are called the Michigan murders at this point. And the details that he would discuss, they were not public knowledge, but what he would say is that his uncle was a police officer investigating this crime and would share these details with him. And that's how he knew these details about the wounds, the specific damage done to those victims.
Yeah, right.
Later on, when as police are learning all this, right, this picture, like they just started being like, we're connecting the dots, we're going to interview this person. So they immediately asked the uncle, like, wait, what did you tell this kid about these murders? He's like, nothing. Like, I'm not even privy to that guy. I don't even talk to him about this stuff. Like, I'm not talking about my
Yeah.
job, much less the nuanced details of these grisly crimes. So by now, the police are pretty sure that this is their guy. They'd end up going to John's apartment to question him about where he was the day that Karen went missing. And they let him know that 7 eyewitnesses saw him with Karen that day, and that another 3 women told police he also tried to entice them to ride his motorcycle that day. So John maintained his innocence and refused police attempts to get him back to the station for a polygraph. By this point, I assume police are kind of waiting for him to kind of slip up and lead them to some more evidence because he's still free. He's totally free. There's no charges or anything, or he hasn't been arrested. But
Hmm.
when all this is going on, cop uncle comes back into the picture. And that's what I
Wait,
meant when I said like sometimes it's just fascinating to know how these guys get caught.
so there really is a cop uncle?
Yes.
Okay.
Again,
I thought you were just making that
no, this reminds me of Ted Kaczynski. I'll have my revenge.
up.
But and the brother that turned him in. So while Karen had gone missing, the uncle, which I'm gonna call him the uncle because it's just more interesting than his name. His name is Sergeant David Leake. But the uncle was on vacation with his family, and he had a German Shepherd, and the German Shepherd stayed at home, and he needed someone to look after the dog. And so
hmm
the uncle gave John the keys to the house, and John was basically living there during this time. When the family gets home from their vacation, they notice like some weird stuff going on. They first off notice there's like black paint on the floor of the basement, and they also noticed that like a bunch of cleaning supplies they owned were missing from the house.
Hate that.
Yeah, never a good sign. The next day is when investigators tell the uncle that his nephew is under investigation. He goes home with this knowledge, and the uncle, in what I assume is like a scene out of a horror movie, he just starts like scraping away some of this paint that's in the basement, and he thinks what he has uncovered under the paint is human blood. And so he reports back to the investigators what he's found. So
Whoa.
police decide to conduct a full-on forensic investigation of the basement and discovered two pretty interesting bits of evidence. First off was that tiny hair clippings, which appear similar to hair clippings found at the site where Karen's body was discovered, they were positively identified to being Karen's hair. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail again. I hate the graphicness of this. Whatever this guy did to Karen, there was obviously a rape involved, and
hmm
there was stuff shoved inside her. And part
hmm
of the stuff that was shoved inside her include these weird small hair clippings that police
Ugh.
were like, why is this in here?
Yeah, oh my God.
And they find this hair clipping in the uncle's basement.
Ugh.
Blood on the ground.
Remember when that guy I was gonna say when that guy subbed out your apartment for a couple of weeks and he like never paid you and was like drinking the entire time?
I did think about that, actually.
I'm glad that he didn't murder anyone in your apartment, or maybe he did, I don't know.
Yeah, I still get angry thinking about it. I'm gonna let's move on. Um, so the other interesting thing they found in this uncle's basement was that blood on the ground. There was blood on the ground. There was absolutely unequivocally there was blood on the ground. Again, this is 1969. They can't do DNA analysis on this. But the best they can
Right.
do is blood type analysis. And what they discovered is that the blood type on the ground didn't match anybody who was in the house or was resident in the house's blood type, but it did match Karen's. So
Oh my God,
there's
poor
that.
thing.
So by this point, they're like, okay, so obviously we know that those other two girls were taken somewhere, killed, and then their bodies were placed somewhere else. Now we found Karen's body, and there's all this evidence pointing to this being the murder site of Karen. And so like it's starting to form a pattern for the cops, right? And
Hmm
so they ended up arresting John and let him know what they had discovered. Um, but at the time, all this is just tied to Karen. It's not related to any of the other murders I mentioned earlier. This is where another incredible, insane tidbit comes into play. Shortly after being arrested and charged, police in Michigan are contacted by investigators in Salinas, California, who thought a murder on their books was connected to John.
Whoa.
In this case, it was a 17-year-old girl named Roxy Ann Phillips, whose nude and badly beaten body was found in a ravine in July between the deaths of Joan and Karen. Karen being the last person I just discussed, who's presumably been killed in the uncle's basement. Police heard through Roxy's friend that she'd been acquainted with a man who recently was visiting Monterey, California, who attended Eastern Michigan, named John, who wanted to be a teacher and was living there temporarily in a camper trailer. Like,
Boo.
obviously, this guy, right?
hmm
So, police tracing John's footsteps found that he was traveling during this time to Monterey, California, towing a camper trailer behind his car. So, they made the connection that the murder of Roxy was also added to John's indictment, but that was a separate indictment. So this was all Michigan-based stuff, and they issued this indictment in California. The whole point of it was you got to hold off until this Karen murder trial is concluded, then you can address Roxy's murder. And so that's what ended up happening. So his
Well,
trial begins, and his defense argues basically that the evidence was shaky and that it was circumstantial and not conclusive, that police mishandled the evidence, and that they intimidated witnesses, and that John is not guilty. That's the whole argument.
hmm
He was
Right, what are you gonna do?
obviously found guilty,
Yeah.
clearly, and he was sentenced to life without parole in solitary confinement. California tried to extradite him back to try him for Roxy's murder, but they gave up because they were like, look, this is a waste of time and it's a waste of money, because even if we do bring him back and secure conviction, he has to go back to Michigan to serve his sentence anyways. Like, he's never getting out of jail. Like, there's no point in doing this. Like, so they let it go. But as it relates to the other murders, again, he's only tried and convicted for Karen's. As it relates to the first murder, the Mary Flessler, the one who has the Eleanor Roosevelt quote associated with her. So she was
hmm
really proud of this 1967 coin, the silver dollar from the expo that she had.
hmm
It was like a keepsake for her. They found that coin in John's dresser.
No.
As it
I mean,
relates
of
to
course, but like poor baby.
Yeah, as it relates to Joanne Scale, the girl who was trying to go to Ann Arbor to visit her boyfriend and then got stopped, and a bunch of guys offered her a ride. So John's roommate Arnold verified that the two of them and another one of their friends offered to give Joan a ride that day at the bus station, and that John later kicked the two other men out and then arrived
Mm,
home 3 hours later, calling Joan a bitch and carrying her purse with him.
great.
Not great.
That explains the couple of people
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
car. Yeah.
The other is Alice Kalum. So Arnold also said that this woman was at their apartment and that her and John got into an argument, and that she left the apartment, then he went racing after her. He returned later with a knife, which he gave to Arnold to hide for him, which he did. He would later state that he wanted to go to the police. He was positive he had killed Alice, but was terrified of him, and so he didn't.
That's fair.
Which at this point, it's like, dude, you already are pretty sure he killed one woman. Like, now you know he killed two. Like, maybe just back off this one. But long story short, he ends up trying to appeal a sentence multiple different ways. None of it goes anywhere because he is so obviously guilty of this stuff. Even if
hmm
he didn't kill one of these, he killed one of the other ones. Like, he did something
Right.
here, right? The only thing is that he actually is exonerated off of one of them, because you had asked, isn't it weird that he shot one in the head? And it was weird because
hmm
Jane Mixer, the law student at University of Miami or Michigan, in 2005, a guy named Gary Earl Lederman. So that would be 40 years, no, 37 years after the murder. This guy, Gary Earl Lederman, was charged and convicted off DNA evidence that was found on her body,
Oh,
for having killed her. And so John
interesting.
is not guilty of that one, but the rest he almost certainly did.
Rough time to be a lady needing a ride. The 60s and
So this
70s.
is when universities started introducing the buddy system. So the buddy system
Yeah.
wasn't really a thing until this point. Yeah. So it was like either I like how they put it. It was either every woman should walk home with a man that they know and trust, or three women. So they assumed that it was like
Wow.
if there was three women, they could overtake a man, which I think two would be enough, frankly, but sure.
I don't know. No, I think that that's fair. It sucks, but like it's hard. I mean, in New York, I used to walk home all the time with my keys in my fist. You know, like I would be able to get my wits together to punch someone in the face with my keys, but that's what I would do just in case, you know?
It is weird to like, I have heard from women about like what it's like to be alone, and like,
hmm
I don't know. I guess like it's like a privilege and a courtesy. But like, I've never walked home and been like scared someone's gonna hurt me.
I so many times. It's just been like you have to be like super alert, take your headphones off, be ready to like fight for yourself. And I definitely had m men that I trust walk me home and like make sure I got inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember doing that in high school, or not in high school, but in college for people too. But
hmm
it just shows like, what our lived experiences are like and can be because like in the cases of these seven women, they walked home and their
Mhm.
parents are updating a website for 40 years or no,
Oh, so
60 years
sad.
about like their favorite kind of macaroni and cheese that they like to eat. Like, it's crazy. Like
Did he ever say anything about why he did it? Is he still
he never
alive?
he yeah, he's still alive. He's 77 years old. He's never said that he's guilty. He's never said that he did it.
Whoa. I see pictures
Yeah.
of him old. Yeah, he's just like hanging out in jail, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, he's never been like, yeah, I did it. He's confessed his innocence and been appealing it ever since.
Ew,
Yeah, he's a horrible person. But
that's so scary.
so anyways, ladies, listen, don't walk home with your keys. Get some mace, get some pepper spray. Like,
That's true. I could have gotten some mace. I did not. Had my keys, and I think now I'd have some. And there's also some really cool things that you can buy now that are like really loud alarms. And I also have on like my iPhone, if you like really quickly click this top button, it'll call 911. So like the top right button on your iPhone, if you click it like 3 times, it'll directly call 911.
wait,
So
really?
I've yeah,
Wait, I can do that right now.
click it 3 times. It'll say, "Do you want to call 911?" If you have it set up, try it.
The top, like the power
Yeah,
button.
yeah. Did it do it?
No, it pulled up my credit card.
Okay, maybe turn it on. Let me do it. Maybe I have to open it. No, I guess maybe I don't have it on. Back to the middle. Well, I should turn that on. I think it's something, or shoot,
Also,
maybe I don't have it.
also, like, find a way to like solve the problem yourself. Like, by the time the cops get there, you're already fucking dead. So, like, yes, have the cops on call, but like, also have like pepper spray on you.
Yeah. Oh no, here's what you do. You hold the volume button and the side button at the same time for a couple seconds, and it'll give you emergency call right away.
Holy shit! Wait, that worked.
Let me take a picture of it. I cannot. But yeah, do that so that you don't have to open your phone. You can just get right to call emergency services.
Man, Apple's so good. Between like these laptops that last a lifetime.
I know.
Anyways, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Agree to agree. Well, thank you, Faris. My announcement for today is that it's my birthday on June 5th, on Wednesday.
Wait, it's your birthday on June 5th?
Yeah. So if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, please share with your friends for my birthday present.
Is it 42?
It is what's the 42? The answer to life and everything. What is 42? It's the answer to life.
It's the meaning
The
of
ultimate, it's the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42. That's from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
one of my favorite movies, which I hate the fact that it doesn't hold up because it
Doesn't it? Doesn't
I watched it like years later and was like, this is kind of stupid.
it? True. I've read, I don't know if I've read it, but I should read it again. So the meaning of life is 42. So I'm excited to be 42.
I was just talking to Rachel about this, about how I guess everybody says this, but like it's kind of nice being our age, you know?
No, I like it. I'm good. Oh no, one thing we missed because we missed last week is I you didn't tell you that I ran a 5K. Did I tell you this? And
No.
so we ran a 5K in town, and they have like a annual Grub Stakes Days, which is like a Yucca Valley town thing. And there's a 2K, a 5K, and a 10K. Last year we did the 2K and Juan did the 10K. And the 10K was a lot. Juan was like, that was too much. And we did the 2K and I was like, that was dumb. I feel stupid. It was like a mile. So we all did the 5K this year. And Florence did great. She got number 9 all around in females, and she got second place in her age group. She did wonderful. She totally was like, I was like, stay in my eyesight. She was gone, just gone. Juan got like fifth in men, and then um Miles got third place for his age group. Um, but I did not get a medal. But I carried Miles half of it. He was crying so hard. He was like, I hate this. I never want to do this again. And he totally gets that from me because I totally would do that during the middle of a 5K. So I carried him and I carried him across the finish line. And then we got the local paper and I was not listed as someone who had ran the 5K. Miles was, Florence was, and Juan was, and I was not. So I wrote a letter to the editor of the local paper and they wrote back and said they're very sorry. But then my body hurt until Wednesday. So that was my old lady thing. I ran the 5K on Sunday and until Wednesday. I was like, ow, 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 ow.
I had a brief moment where I thought maybe I should sign up for a half marathon, and I was
Oh my
like, "What are
God.
you talking about?" Like,
Ew, gross. No.
I'm like Miles. I'm like, dude, like this is pointless. This is so stupid. There's margaritas in every store I'm passing, and I'm like just running. Like I don't get it. Like, what's the point of this?
I definitely remember one time we did an AIDS walk. I used to do that in New York, which was fun. You could like do a big walk, you raise money, all the things. But in the middle of the AIDS walk, we would like stop to get brunch. Because I'm like, I'm not timing myself for this AIDS walk. I'm
Weren't you
gonna
the one?
stop and have a
I think you
Benedict.
were the one that started the whole there's some families that start
Oh, the like,
drinking on Thanksgiving morning and some families that go running on Thanksgiving morning. You got to pick the
yeah,
right one to join.
exactly. You need to make that clear before you marry someone. Is their family gonna make you run a 5K Thanksgiving morning, or are they gonna start drinking at 10 a.m. and start cooking?
Yeah.
Those are your two options.
Yeah, we're cut from the same cloth, Taylor.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not doing that. But no, but it was really fun. And we'll do it again every year because it's really fun. You get to like donate money to the community and like the lady that works at the post office was there, and some of their friends were there. And then like the guy who has the car covered in Trump stickers was there and he was holding a cross that said Jesus and an American flag and was yelling Happy Memorial Day and then like praying. He didn't actually do the 5K, but he paid for it because he won the raffle. It's a whole thing. I
He
parked
won.
far
Wait,
away
he
from him.
won the raffle.
Because you have to like you get raffle tickets if you pay to do the 5K, and he got raffle tickets, but he didn't actually run. He just stood there the whole time holding his cross and his American flag and like praying and yelling Happy Memorial Day every 5 minutes.
So one of the scariest moments I had was like the first month or so I moved to Austin, and if anybody is in Austin, Lady Bird Lake and Auditorium Shores, like it's crazy populated, crazy popular. Everybody's up there running up and down the by the lake, and I take my dog out for a walk. I'm gonna walk the lake, and a guy in camo gear with like a giant knife, like a Rambo knife. He was walking crosswise on the trail holding Make America Great Again flag, but he was like cutting people off, right? Like he was going sideways, length to length, as people were trying to go
Yeah.
by him. And
Hmm.
then I noticed that he also had like a wife and like a very young child. They were like sitting on the side watching him do this. And I was like, in that one moment, I was just like, it was like a weird moment, like being like, it's scary because you have no idea what that guy's potentially gonna do. Then you're like,
Yeah,
what is going on with his wife and his kid? Like, what is he doing to them? Where he's like, hey,
exactly.
this Saturday morning when all these people are gonna have a good time and go running and then make game plans for where they're gonna get eggs Benedict, we're gonna go cut them off
Hmm.
threateningly with a giant freaking knife on my side, holding camo gear with a giant flag. It was really creepy. It was
I
really
hate
scary.
that. I hate that. That sucks. I feel bad for them. I read this random article this week from a woman who was a cable person and she would like go into houses and like install cable and she talked about a lot of like the weird shit that she saw and one of the like she went to like a Russian mobster's house and they made her do coke before she could do the cable so they would know that she would be a narc, stuff like that. But like one person, the husband was like so mad the cable wasn't working and the wife kind of confessed to her that like if he cannot watch Fox News and be upset at the world, he's going to beat her up.
Dude, Taylor, I okay, sorry, we're segueing into some weird conversations. So at our last company together,
Hmm.
do you remember Politicon?
Hmm.
So for anybody that doesn't know, Politicon is like this political nerd conference, but it's like it's not it's not policy wonks. It's not like the Heritage Foundation. It's like the people are running like really obscure underground like YouTube channels and like
Hmm.
stuff like that. These are
Hmm.
not insiders. They're just like crazy people mostly. Like that show up here. Anyways, that company would sponsor this like a showing because in this case it was in LA. We're based in LA, all that stuff. Anyways, um I was there and people would come to booths and try to talk to us. And this family came up. And at first I was like, man, there's like something weird about this. Like the wife seems normal. The kid seems kind of normal. It was the kid was like maybe like 3 years old. The husband seems like he has a contorted look on his face.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's so weird. He was like talking to me, and like I didn't notice it for the first little bit, and I noticed that he had like an InfoWars hat on.
Mm.
It's like, oh, like this is like it was a moment of like when you consume this content, like think about the content you consume because it'll it'll impact you to the point where your face is just contorted in a way you're like, are you like gonna hit me? Like it's so
Yeah.
weird how
And imagine
angry
like
you
living with
can
that
get.
person or like watching that person become that person.
And that was the thing. That's why
Yeah.
that's where my head went with the wife and the kid because like I was like, dude, like you gotta be so scared all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like you wake up and this guy's coming out of the bathroom and just like with his face on, like God, he's just
And
so
is nice
angry.
probably, you know.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
they're scary. It's like yeah, I don't know. Be careful about the content you consume because I mean, there's a difference between like being open minded and being like just okay and crazy.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's scary. It's scary. And it's scary that like you turn a corner and there's like so many different things you can find on the internet, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Or you
there's
can find
so
us
much.
and we're wholesome and happy and healthy and
Or
we're the
you can tell
best
your
thing.
friends
Yeah,
about
we're
us
so
and
happy.
share it with like everyone you know. You
We're
know,
smiling.
this
None of
is
our faces are
like good
contorted.
content. My face is contorted this entire episode, but I'm glad that no one can see it.
Anyways, Taylor. Yes, write to us at doingthefelpod@gmail.com. Find us on the socials at doingthefelpod. Anything else to lead off with, Taylor?
No, that's it. Thank you, Fars. Thank you, friends. Happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday, Taylor.
Thank you.
Bye all.